deny climate change is to procrastinate while the earth sinks.
I'm a student and I study communication studies.
I'm a PhD history and development student.
I am a student at Maynooth University studying a Masters in Historical Archive.
I'm a first year PhD student here at Maynooth.
Hey, I'm a student in Maynooth University and I study anthropology.
I'm a student in Maynooth and I study business and law.
I'm studying, in my final year, studying history and politics.
My name
in
is
Maynooth.
Sinead McGrath. I'm a doctoral researcher in University College Dublin, School of Politics and International Relations.
So my name is Patrick Marin. I'm the lecturer in international development, a lecturer in international development, I suppose the general areas around politics and economics.
I mean, I guess the big thing that you say when you say refugees that would come to mind would be Syria, just because it's kind of
Syria,
so topical and things at the moment.
The perspective of a refugee, those who are internally displaced or externally displaced, those seeking refuge because of issues around oppression and conflict. And then migrants I usually associate with, again, more kind of an economic necessity that drives people to move from their traditional areas, either internally or externally. And that can be, like different forms, I suppose. You can have very well-heeled, well-educated migrants versus those, I suppose, in terms of skill sets.
I guess typically people would think of like Syrian refugees and like war refugees. The climate refugees wouldn't directly come to someone's head, I don't think. But if I was to think of climate refugees, I'd probably think of like Bangladesh and Tuvalu.
I think the way news and media kind of wants you to think of a refugee and asylum seekers is the war-torn, foreigner coming to your country, looking for asylum, looking for shelter, looking for help. But they're always depicted as kind of, you can't really give them help for whatever reason. That there's no. I think with Ireland there's the thing that there's no room because we're such a small country, and that comes across on the Irish media, especially when we agreed to take in so many Syrian refugees and then said we won't take in the Syrian refugees. So I think that's definitely the first thing that comes to my mind.
Well, to be honest with you, I wasn't really that familiar even with anybody being a climate migrant, as you call it, and I'm quite shocked. But obviously, if they're to no fault of their own, they've been displaced due to the changing climate and all that, of course they should be looked after, and they should be looked after properly by each and every government of whatever country.
It sort of comes to mind of people that have no homes, that they don't feel secure in their homes. People who live in countries that are a bit, in warfare, or they don't have resources like, say, Ireland would kind of have, or England, so less developed countries. People would want to leave those refugees. They're looking for somewhere more stable to live.
Well, I suppose before I studied, I would have had a lot of ignorance around it, if I'm being honest, and it's only through education that I would be very, I have a lot of empathy towards refugees, and their status would change for me as a development community worker.
Yeah, we've identified two issues that mean that this more recent event, which is climate change and displacement, cannot enter in this particular convention. The first one is the fact that the vast majority of victims will not be outside their country of residence. In fact, it causes a huge amount of internally displaced persons. So, for example, you're from a coastal area of Asia, such as Bangladesh, a coastal country, the most likely movement of people will be from coastal areas into urban centres, which causes problems in itself in terms of informal settlements, urbanisation. But if you are from the Atoll Islands, if you're from Pacific Islands, you're experiencing a real threat of actually losing all of your livelihoods and having to be resettled in a completely different country. But at this very moment, you are not outside your country of residence. You're not being persecuted either by a private agent, a government, or any of the agents that have been identified in refugee law until now. So the agent of persecution here is climate, which is problematic in itself, which means that the 1951 Convention does not cover what we would call climate refugees.
I think in terms of the costs of dealing with refugees, that falls underneath traditional aid programs, and it's relatively small cost, and all of it is actually spent in country in the kind of the donor country itself. So again, it's almost equivalent to the likes of Tide aid, where a lot of the return is actually to the actual donor itself. So I really wouldn't see it as a huge onerous burden in that sense. I haven't yet to see a study where they talk about there being a huge cost associated with absorbing people into a system. There are definitely issues in terms of, I suppose, the political cost around moving towards a more multi-ethnic society, and you've got groups of people who feel very threatened by that sort of change. But this is something that we have to deal with as societies, because we're moving away from this, monocultural, homogenous type societies that we had as a legacy after the Second World War. So how do we deal with that? I think that's a political issue. Many countries, like for instance in Europe, are facing demographic deficits in terms of their own ability to replicate their population. And so migrant flows were hugely important in terms of rebuilding swathes of Europe. And I think will be hugely important in terms of addressing some of the demographic deficits that we will face in the future.
Before this century, no other generation had seen more than one Category 5 hurricane in their lifetime. In this century, this has happened twice, and notably, it has happened in the space of just 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, I think climate change is going to end us all a lot sooner than we think.
I definitely think it's something that can be observed already, but because the effects aren't that drastic on us, we kind of just shun it away, like no one cares too much, but it's inevitable, especially with the climate refugees. I think it should be sorted out now before like millions of people are stuck in say 10-20 years time. So yeah, I think there needs to be more education on it as well, because not enough people know outside of the university demographic.
It needs to be addressed now, and I understand it is hard at the international aspect to get countries to change. It's hard to get all the countries in the world to sign up to one thing and say we're all going to do this. I think Obama mentioned many times he had that problem. But I think it really comes down to the people. I think the people have to start to change. Look what happened in China, the people protested, and now the Chinese government had no choice but to change their laws. So that started from the root, the bottom up. So I think world leaders kind of need to listen to people more, and hopefully that's where the change will start.
I don't really see that much effects of it myself. It doesn't affect me as such, but of course, long term is the issue, and it's just the mindset that we're trying to get people to frame their thinking around. Think of our descendants, but people don't do that. We're always thinking short. That's the difficulty, and that's the biggest challenge to climate change, to get people into the mindset for the future.
It's here today, and it has been here before, and it is our future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like everyone should have that kind of basic level of life and that good standard of living. So I think if it's not being met because of where they're living and being affected by climate change, absolutely. I think it's just basic human decency.
Absolutely. At the moment, I feel it's very much reliant still on private charity. Like, certain personalities raise millions compared to what governments across the world are they're still very slow, as they are with a lot of things, to implement changes.
Well, in my opinion, we're all human, but I know that's not going to be accepted from an official point of view. But the fact that borders are imagined in the first place and they're politically created and they're not actually real geographically, unless we're an island, that's more obvious. But they've changed so much over time. So to say that we're all looking after our own people is just not really realistic, because nationalities change depending on conflicts and politics and everything. So
You need conversation to demolish these borders that we put up between us and creating an othered type of rhetoric. So I think that would be something we need to work on.
My first reaction is sympathy. I'd have huge empathy towards anybody in this kind of situation. Anyone that's displaced due to war or due to anything like that should be welcomed into any country and looked after properly, given the proper structures, given the proper educational facilities at this time.
Maybe take them more into consideration, especially whenever they're making, big business deals, especially.
Well, as a development community worker, I believe in equality and fairness, social inclusion for all. And, we don't know what conditions these migrants and refugees are living from. They're coming for a safe space over here. And there does need to be a lot more awareness around it. So I feel very passionate about it, and I would be for migrants and refugees in the country.
Now, the good news is that there is more awareness of this particular issue, and it's important that people go out and they find balanced news based on this particular issue. The case in New Zealand is an interesting case because there have been families from Tuvalu who have applied for refugee status in New Zealand, were denied it based on the fact that they did not fit into the 5 convention grounds, but then offered humanitarian visas. So there is a precedent there, and the Green Party, which is a part of a coalition government in New Zealand, is open to having a particular agreement with Pacific Islands in order to add protection measures that would be outside of the Refugee Convention. There are legal mechanisms that are based on the Refugee Convention, which is the Cartagena Convention of 1984. You have the Organization of African States. They have their convention from 1969, and they have widened the definition of refugee to talk about societal chaos in that sense. So there is scope within those 2 conventions for climate refugees. Paris Agreement. So the Paris Agreement has established a task force to deal specifically with displacement. And that has to do with the Warsaw mechanisms for damage and loss. So we're waiting to see how that task force puts these ideas into.
Yes, I would be in favour of this.
Yeah, definitely. And I think because climate change is happening now and we need to take action, that we need to acknowledge that there's so many climate change refugees at the moment. So.
Absolutely 100%. These people need to be looked after, as I explained. And of course, you'll have my support, no problems.
Yeah, I would.
Absolutely, yeah. And I'd work for other people to get on board as well.